Mr. C. They say the best way to start is from home if charity was still at home anyway. But let's begin with Mr. C from Lagos here. Mr. C, walk us through this story from the Punch newspaper, where we see fewer Forex crisis. Marketers propose 720 naira per liter, suspend fuel imports. That's what's happening.
Okay, so thank you, Mas. So they're not exactly proposing. Ever since the announcement by the current president that the pre-existing fuel subsidy regime had ended, we had been subjected to the facts and present reality that the price of petrol will be determined by the forces of markets, demand and supply. Now, there's no use restating the obvious, but it must be restated. Nigeria still does not refine crude oil within its territory. We've discussed this a million and one times, and I'm not going to start that here. However, as a result, we then have to import refined crude oil or petrol from outside the country. Now, what that means is we're then exposed to the vagaries of the international price of crude oil, coupled or aligned with the fact that the importer and importers, as the case may be, need foreign exchange to do that. Now, Nigeria has been in the midst of a foreign exchange scarcity scenario for at least the better part of 2 or 3 years, and it doesn't show any sign of easing up anytime soon. Now, we've seen how the price of petrol has moved from 185 to 488 to 568. Now, the Independent Petrol Marketers Association of Nigeria, along with the Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria, have advised that at the current Naira rates, which is the Naira is exchanging for any sum between 910 Naira to 950, depending on where you get it from the parallel market, that they envisage that the price band for petrol in Nigeria will be between 680 Naira to 720. But they further advise that if it goes to 1,000 Naira, the dollar exchanges, if a US dollar, $1 note exchanges for 1,000 Nigerian naira, then we're looking at a minimum of 750 Naira per liter for petrol.
So as the NNPC, but we are yet to hear anything from the NNPC, probably the usual 60-day supply because of this one. I hope, are we getting any assurances from that quarters?
We haven't heard anything from NNPC, but the truth of the matter is, currently the landing cost for petrol is 619 Naira.
Yeah.
Officially, it's being sold for 588. So someone is carrying the burden of a loss already. Now, an independent marketer brought in petrol recently and has found it extremely difficult to recoup its investment because in the intervening period, the Naira has further depreciated against the dollar. Now, what does this portend for Nigeria? Now, from a point of security, it's a very alarming situation because when the people, the populace becomes very restive about the price of petrol allied with the increase in the price of foodstuff, basic foodstuffs, you have a potential protest, you have a potential boiling point. And if exacerbated, the consequences could be very dire. Now, what does it portend for Nigerians? Public power supply is not optimal. Now, the price of petrol continues to go on the increase. And one sad thing about Nigeria is almost everything that increases in terms of price never returns to its pre-increase level. Okay. Now, small, micro, medium-scale businesses that rely on petrol to provide or power their businesses will start to revisit the cost. And it gets to a certain point, you can no longer pass on the cost to the consumer because the consumer is already overburdened. Mm-hmm. So this is a very big challenge for the current administration, and it will be very interesting to see how it goes. Now, the bigger question is, why aren't we earning enough foreign exchange? We're a mono-product economy, largely. We're still very dependent on crude oil, the sale of crude oil. We don't have enough, we're not producing enough goods, we're not producing enough services, or we're not providing enough services. And just the other week, a major pharmaceutical company decided to close shop. But before then, at least for the past 10 years, they hadn't really been doing much. Now, if you're not producing goods and you're not providing services, where's the foreign exchange going to come from?
Okay, Mr. C, we have to get on to, but then thanks so much for explicit, for that explanation you've given to us in relation to that story we've just picked up right now. But we'd like you to know you can be part of the conversation this morning by leaving us WhatsApp messages on 0809 444 0988.
May I just add something?
Okay, yes, AB, go ahead.
You know, we always talk about market forces, but we never remember that in the market, you have those buying, you have those selling, and you have those carrying load. At the moment, Nigeria looks like only one carrying load, and Nigerians are the ones carrying the load. We need to have.
Bozimo, you have to check the connection.
Role and a place in market.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Let's get on to your own story now. Thanks for that clarification once more. Vanguard newspaper is what you're holding in your hands right now, AB. NURTW, NLC threatens to picket police headquarters, others over harassment and intimidation. This story is almost linked to the fuel supply also. But interestingly, they're not talking about fuel supply right now in terms of increment of the fuel price at the fares, but it's because of harassment. So take us through this story.
You know, it's a pity when we hear about the Nigeria police involved in what would, on the surface of it, appear like unconstitutional breaches. According to the NLC, the police is harassing some members of the NURTW. There were some recent reports about some places being taken over and all that. The details, of course, would emerge from those who are intimately involved. But bottom line for me is the police has a role, a responsibility, a duty that is quite large and what we expect from them. So theirs is to be more or less a peacemaker rather than a participant in assorted disputes. And I think peace and sanity would be best maintained when the police are operating well within their role. According to the NLC here, the police are taking a position vis-a-vis one or the other of the parties in some NURTW dispute, and that is not helpful. So they are threatening to picket. I don't know how effective that will be, but way before that, I think the police should look carefully at its frame of reference and operate according to the law and the Constitution to avert any such picket or deepening crisis.
It looks apparently that the police will make do with a lot of probably crash courses on human relations in this period, because we're going to have a whole lot of civil, confrontation in this period. We're just looking at the possibility of the prices of fuel going up very soon. And the traditional thing, once again, there will be marches and then protests here and there. But we just hope that they look for a more civil way to engage the populace so that we don't have casualties and we don't have this kind of recurrence once again.
100% correct.
I've seen messages already dropping by already, but let's let you know you can be part of the conversation on 0809 444 0981 will be the number for you to be part of the conversation this morning. Mr. C, if you can do this for us in 3 minutes, let's get back to the NMA. It seems everyone has a case to make. And guess what? They're asking the federal government to declare state of emergency on the state of healthcare in Nigeria. That's according to the Ekiti State branch of that body. But again, we've been through this road over and over again. A mere declaration, is it a wand that when you declare it, then it's done?
No, you're correct. It doesn't work then. So I guess it's not just the health sector that needs a declaration of a state of emergency. The entire country needs a state of emergency, because if you look at basically every possible sector, there is some sort of emergency that needs to be sorted. Now, you're right. It goes beyond voicing out a declaration. There has to be a deliberate and intentional funding. There has to be a deliberate roadmap. But what we find in Nigeria, and basically across almost every sphere, is there's no roadmap. We just have somebody has some vague idea of some destination and he announces we're going to get there. There's no thought out process. So a state of emergency in the health sector, what does it require? One, how do we get qualified people to study the various disciplines? How do we ensure that once they finish the studies, we retain them? How do we ensure that those who are already in those professions stay? How do we encourage them? How do we ensure that their allowances and their salaries reflect the actual cost of living? How do we ensure that the proper drugs required are provided regularly and on schedule? How do we provide proper funding in terms of equipment? How do we provide for training, updated training for the various personnel? So it's really sad that each year we continue to discuss this. And I dare say that even 15% of the national budget each year will not even begin to scratch the surface on what's required in the medical sector. So we just continue to hope and pray that one day we'll start to get it right.
If my elementary knowledge of economics still serves me any good, even though it's not a Harvard standard, but I'm just looking at it, we're told that there's something called preference of skill. In all of these areas, like you mentioned, there's a need to declare emergency in virtually all sphere of Nigerian life. If we were to pick, let's say, which area would you say we could tackle first and say, let's fund this properly and then know we are done with it?
So I would say that the two we should tackle, I would even dare say concurrently, education and health. A country with citizens that are not educated is heading for disaster. A country with citizens that do not have access to healthcare is in trouble. AB has a point to make.
AB, over to you in a minute with you for a break. Go on.
The place to declare a state of emergency is in leadership. We have poor leadership, number one. Number two, we don't understand the difficulty when you have overworked doctors. And healthcare is an entire, it's a structure that must work together. Before you can do an operation with a fantastic surgeon, you need an anesthetist. You need so many other people. So it's not even about just a few of them, like the story is saying. We need to look at it, like Mr. C has said, globally. But the place for a state of emergency where we're lacking the most quality is in Nigeria's leadership.
It is freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM, where we get to dissect all of the dailies this morning, but we'll be due for a break now. So when we come back, the messages are in already. We get to take them before we get into the next set of papers. The numbers to get your WhatsApp messages to will be on 0809-444-0981. We are Smooth 98.1 FM. Stay tuned.
Maybe you're completely correct. Because
I know, you are correct about the two sectors. You are very correct, but
even the leadership, I don't know. It's just amazing. I don't know how we're going to get it right.
At the very top, it's for them.
It's all about ensuring your financial goals are met.
But even the followers, we need to declare a state of emergency with.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But I mean, think of the budget. Think of the budget. What would 40 billion naira do in the health, in the various hospitals, rather than being put on bulletproof cars? Think about terms, what you said, scale of preference, Omatseye, scale of preference.
Yes.
40 billion. You prefer to give bulletproof cars to people rather than giving drugs and equipment to the doctors. There you go. That's why the leaders, we need a state of emergency there.
Okay. We just nailed it. We're due in about 16, let's say 10 minutes. We are back to you now. So
10 minutes or 10 seconds.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Sorry, 10 seconds. So
Do you need a state of emergency in the studio?
Oh, let me know. No. Come on, guys. So we're back. All right. We're Smooth 98.1 FM. It's gone 13 minutes before we hit the 8 o'clock mark, and it's still freshly pressed. And I've got Mr. C here. Good morning, Mr. C, once again.
Good morning, sir.
And AB is all the way from Warri. AB, are you still there?
I'm actually in Port Harcourt right now. Good morning.
AB, how do you... Anyway. All right, so let's go on now. I see Tonye is here already. Tonye is here from Magodo, and he says, good morning, freshly pressed and AB and Mr. C analyst. As long as the government officials are so far removed from the everyday pressures of the normal Nigerians, they will not be under any pressure to fix things. It goes on to, re-echo the point AB was making a while ago before we went on the break, that leadership is where we need to declare a state of emergency. No government official has to queue for or worry about what their next liter of fuel is coming from. A few prices can go up to 1,000 naira per liter and they will be unperturbed. So says Tonye. And then in comes in Ajayi saying, good morning, the president must immediately take another look at the policy of floating the naira in the foreign exchange market. Manufacturers are groaning under the weight of continued depreciation of the naira, leading to many of them exiting the country. Petrol marketers are also threatening further increase in the fuel prices as a result of the unstable Forex market. The country is at the brink of economic collapse. Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo, GI Sherry. Idema Puza chimes in with this one saying, the only solution to fuel pump prices is repairing our refineries. That would take care of the freight liner of bringing it from abroad and the cost of dollar exchange. It would reduce the cost of fuel and ultimately reduce our sufferings. Idima Puza from Surulere. Next, we see Ken from Lekki. Good morning, crew, and thanks for the analysis. It says, what has the government done to punish those who benefited from the subsidy corruption? Also, while the poor are making sacrifices, what has the government done to curb cost of governance? Finally, what has government done as consequence management or deterrent to officials that are corrupt? Why does it seem as though we are rewarding those who were accused of corruption while holding previous public office? Is it the way a country should go? Ken from Lekki. And next comes in Shegun. All main presidential candidates said they would immediately remove fuel subsidy. They did think of the non-performance of the refineries and they were not properly grilled on this? Why are we pretending to be surprised after the outcome? Shegun drops that one in. Joseph Menyi says, good morning, freshly pressed, Omas, the vibrant analyst, Mr. C and AB Bozimo. The burdens of Nigerians are now carrying is overwhelming and overweighting, yet the government isn't concerned. The lawmakers have gone on vacation till September 26th, with prayers in their email anyway, but while the government is busy preparing how to go to war with the Niger Republic. Why isn't other countries like Adesico and sympathetic to the coup, but it's Nigeria, we don't have priority. May God help Nigeria. Joseph Main from Silver Estate, Lagos. So let's get back into the papers. We've taken care of some of the messages already. And next we go to, who's taking the ball next? Abi. Abi,
Yes.
We'll come to you with this story on street trading. Ogun gives 3-day ultimatum to traders, so says the Punch newspaper.
This is a time-honored threat where government officials threaten people they should get off the streets, and there's often one form of a task force or the other established, and very soon you find people's goods being, seized and consequences in the short term, but eventually it creeps back. And we have to ask ourselves, why is this failing method always pursued? Have we ever wondered why it is in other climes that we claim to love and know, you don't have this level of street trading? In fact, those who are street trading are seen as urchins and, they are really not recommended. In Lagos there, you can actually make a pot of soup on your way home successfully, and there's no problem from the streets. In traffic, you can get your car washed. You can even almost iron your clothes for work tomorrow. That is how much street trading has taken over Lagos, of course, on a lighter note. Now,
but it's Ogun we are talking about now, not Lagos.
I mean, they are learning from their neighbor, Lagos. So
okay.
the thing there is this. Let's look at it from a planning point of view. If everybody feels that it is fair that if I have goods to sell, everybody will be compelled to come to the same place or places, then people won't have that imperative to go to illegal spots to go and trade. And yes, indeed, the aesthetics of our towns and cities will be improved. We must find a way to encourage people to see those benefits rather than always chasing them around with a cane and a potential punishment. I think we have to create
AV's network is freezing there.
incentives as well as consequences of are they affordable? If they're not affordable, then that is a good place to apply subsidies. Let people be able to afford the stalls and shops in the proper markets. Right now, when you hear the kind of costs about some of those stores, you can understand that the person whose entire merchandise costs about 12,000 cannot afford a shop that costs 2 million per annum. Let's face it. So we must actually subsidize such people at that micro level, and then you can now tell them, get off the streets. Then when they know that they will still be, they will still get customers there, they'll be better able to go. But right now, it's a running battle. You'll pursue them for a week, 2 weeks, a month, they'll be back eventually. That's not a winning formula.
Okay, AB, before I let this topic, this headline just go to bed, there is this general belief that if you don't sell on the streets, you don't sell as much as you do when you have a shop or a store. So it's also on the part of the people too. And remember earlier on, we're talking of the need to declare a state of emergency on the followers themselves as well as the leaders when we went on a break.
I completely agree. But that may only seem true if the human instinct that I may be being cheated is played into. And I repeat, if you provide the place where everybody comes to, and I know as a seller that there is no one out there on the street, then I'll go to that place. But the place must also be affordable for me. You can't put market stalls out there for 1 million, 2 million a month, where the person who's selling has a total worth of their goods of 15,000 naira. It can't work.
Okay, so let me.
And so for those in the class and those at the back who have never purchased anything on the street, let's see your hands. Oh, well, you see them. Well,
So let me quickly chime in. The government is being two-faced about this, and I'm going to explain why. You cannot sell on the street if you're not paying a tax to the local government officials or some street level strongman on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So until you get rid of the tax collectors, you will always find them on the streets.
Neil, they say when you're looking for the eye of the fish, your hands should go to the head. So Mr. C has just gone in there. It's not like they just fall from the sky and start trading there and they're not paying any taxes somewhere on the streets.
Very true. Very true.
Now let's get Mr. C. This is your next story. The Nigerian Air Force strikes hit oil thieves and terrorists and others. So says the Guardian newspaper. Can you walk us through this story?
Okay, so thank you. Very quickly, the Nigerian Air Force reported that over the past few days, it had conducted several simultaneous air attacks on suspected criminal positions, and they report that all the attacks were successful. Now, I have my doubts, and I'll explain why. We've been treated to recent incidents over the past 2 years where the Air Force has reportedly struck suspected criminal movements, groups, or locations, and the news subsequently comes out that they targeted the wrong people, innocent people were killed. Nothing has come out of those incidents. All we continue to hear is there was some sort of wrong intelligence. Now, in this latest set of stories, they tell us that intelligence revealed that they hit the right targets. Now, I find it a bit puzzling that there was no attempt to pick up any survivor. All they were the story in the Northeast was that they struck a location, people died, then they saw the other people running away. What does that even mean? Why is there no coordinated action between the ground forces and the airborne component so that when the airborne component strikes, whoever survives, the ground forces go up and mop up? Now, in the Southeast, they say they struck a suspected IPOB location. I don't know what that means, because I will not be shocked tomorrow to hear that innocent people have been killed. Now, if you knew it was a suspected IPOB location, it was well known, how was no attempt made on the ground to raid the place?
Well, that's taken already, but it just simply the summary is just that there is need for more coordination. When the air component moves in, you also want to see the ground component also moving in to do the clearing up all of the damage.
That is the way it works.
That's what you see in movies, but movie isn't life.
That's the way they conducted themselves in Sierra Leone and Liberia.
Okay. Now, AB, this story is yours, and that's your last paper for this morning. The Daily Trust newspaper, bandits attack on farmers may worsen food crisis in Nigeria.
So, sorry, before AB starts, there's a gazette. It's terrorists, not bandits. Let's stop this nonsense about bandits.
Okay. AB, speak on the gazette and then move in.
Duh. So who is that news that bandit attacks may worsen food crisis? Is that really a headline? Anyway, to go into the story, it's obvious that until we handle the terrorists who are attacking Nigerians of all types, we will actually face a food crisis. Children will always be the first victims, but even adults who cannot feed their children and who cannot have a daily way of making their life will be affected. We're talking about armed groups killing more than 128 farmers and kidnapping 937 across Nigeria between January and June this year. And when you keep calling people who are killing, raping, murdering, causing arson, bandits, I don't know what kind of language morphing you're trying to do. These are terrorists, and the army has to demonstrate their ability within Nigerian space to handle Nigerian security forces before they are deployed to Niger Republic or elsewhere. We have many problems here.
Okay.
Clearly from this headline are not yet focuses on Nigeria's problems. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Mr. C, you would sum this up for us in a minute. The last paper goes to you. Vanguard newspaper, Abia government bans use of motorcycles. It's coming on the heels of after that donation of some foreign Hilux vans, but take us through the banning.
Okay, so very quickly, the Abia State government has banned the operation of commercial motorcycles in the state capital, Umuahia, and the commercial capital, Aba. Now, no reasons were provided in the press release, and again, it's a failure of the media to ask the necessary questions. But one can only imagine it must have been done ostensibly on the face of it for security reasons. So let's see how everything
starting from today, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, it starts from today. So let's see how everything unfolds. There must be a reason why the governor has decided to take this step. And it's not out of place because even here in Lagos, on paper, they are banned from operating in a number of local governments. So there is the declaration, then there's the enforcement. Let's see whether this will be enforced differently and distinctly from what we are observing and experiencing here in Lagos.
Well, gentlemen, that takes us to quickly clear up the backlog of the messages we've got here waiting for us. Bosun from Surulere. Well, the regulation is inevitable. Importation of PMS should be restricted to only NNPC for now until local refineries come up or build USD reserves via crude sales. It is illogical for private marketers to go to the parallel market to source for FX to close out their LC positions with value between 20 to 80 million US dollars per cargo. The parallel market is not meant to support dollar demands above 10,000 US dollars. Demand will always outweigh supply. To Bosun, I see Nedu with this message here. I just wish the refineries can start working by the president saying refineries work, just like it did for the fuel subsidy and currency. The government likes to look for the easy way out. Nedu, that's what he says. Emeka Onelum says, from Amuo, our health sector needs more than a state of emergency. There are government hospitals in this country that lack simple oxygen. Even a blood bank with a functional fridge is lacking. I'm a doctor, and I can tell you that many of my colleagues, including specialist consultants, are leaving in droves as they can't cope with the state of our health system. And this final message from Fabian from Ekbe says, good morning, everyone. I fear the country may soon degenerate It goes on, but we just hope that at some point our leaders and the followers will get things right. At this point, I want to say thank you to AB Bozimo for your time this morning, all the way from Port Harcourt.
Thank you. The pleasure and privilege are both mine. You guys have a wonderful week ahead.
And I say thank you to Mr. C for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone who sent in their messages this morning. It's a good morning. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa.